Welcome back to another episode of Shift with Elena Agar. In this conversation, I am joined by Steven Puri. He's an accomplished entrepreneur whose career has taken him from engineering and Academy Award-winning film production to tech startups, and most recently, wellness innovation as the founder of Sukha Company. Steven shares his unique journey from coding in his childhood to producing special effects for blockbuster films that we all know, such as Independence Day, to leading at major Hollywood studios and eventually pivoting his focus to productivity, wellness, and the science of flow. Together, we explored real-life challenges of kind of balancing ambition, hustle, and well-being. We discussed Steven's personal struggles with procrastination, overwhelm, which then kind of really led him to found, the Sukha Company, where it's all about productivity and finding that flow, and it's an amazing, amazing tool. So along the way, we, kind of dove into the importance of self-awareness and mindfulness, community, even healthy competition in driving both personal and professional growth. So if you're somebody who wants to know how do you go through being an engineer to then leading creative teams at big major Hollywood production companies, to then just starting your own business. I think he's a great example of somebody who's wore multiple hats, successful in his life, who's continuing to innovate and recreate himself throughout his career and making an impact along the way. So if you like it, please do subscribe, share, comment, and as always, come back for more. Thank you. Steven, welcome to the Shift Podcast.
It's nice to be here. I hope we have some fun and actionable things to share.
Yes, absolutely. I look forward to it. You are a seasoned entrepreneur. You had a quite diverse career in film production and technology, and now wellness. So lots to uncover there. Take me through a little bit through your career story, because I think it's super interesting. I'm always curious to hear, what do people study? What did they end up doing? How did you come about to having the career and the success that you have today?
I will preface it with this thought. For everyone listening, this is an episode to listen to if you want some very actionable, interesting advice from someone who's both been a senior executive at a couple of film studios and also raised like $21 million of venture and has run some tech companies, right? So I have some cross-pollination sort of observations on how to be productive, how to get the hustle on in a healthy way. If that's what you're looking for, great. If not, hey, it was really nice of you to come. Thanks for coming. So the spine of my story on which we'll hang all these little events is basically this. I was raised not far from you in Northern Virginia. Both my parents were IBM engineers. Mom was a software engineer. Dad was a hardware engineer. So, it's like your mom was a great figure skater. You learn to figure skate, right? My mom was a coder. I learned to code when I was a little kid, right? So I was a little code monkey going to the computing center with her and writing my little things, right? So went to USC in Los Angeles. USC has a fantastic cinema TV school. So a lot of my friends in the dorm were aspiring Spielbergs and Lucases and that sort of thing. So you always have this, like Tuesday night, let's go to the movies and then have a discussion about, what did we see and what was interesting. So I had a lot of exposure to that. And I happened to be, luckily, in LA when film went digital. And I could speak engineer because I'd been an engineer, and I could speak creative because my friends were creatives. And that was a very marketable thing at that moment in time when I was getting out of school, because not a lot of people could do both. And suddenly film was a digital computer-generated medium. My career went very well. I produced the computer-generated effects for about 14 movies. One of those was Independence Day, for which we won the Academy Award for visual effects, which helps your career, period, full stop. I set up my first company with the director and producer of Independence Day because we became friends. Ended up selling that 4 years later to Das Werk, which is a big German conglomerate, kind of Liberty Media. And, in your 20s, you think you're invincible, you think you're smart, you think everything is possible. So did not realize that what seemed easy then is actually, I got very lucky, right? So by late 20s, I had my first exit. This was interesting. I thought, okay, what do I want to do? I took 2 years off, traveled the world. And then I thought, I'd like to actually work on making movies as opposed to helping make a little piece of other people's movies. How can I put movies together and maybe become like a studio chairman, a producer, that sort of thing. Worked really hard going into my 30s on that. Ended up through, hard work and a lot of luck, executive vice president for Kurtzman Dorsey at DreamWorks, the live action DreamWorks, and a vice president at 20th Century Fox, where I was running action franchises like Die Hard and Wolverine. And did that. Had, a moment of like, okay, wow, I'm here. I'm the guy running the Die Hard franchise for, News Corp. Oh, wow, that's kind of fun. But also realizing that nothing I was doing was really changing the world in any meaningful way. It was like I would wake up and be the guy telling his kids, okay, daddy's going to go make Die Hard 11 now so we can pay for your college, right? And I thought to myself, what do I want to do? I said, well, the only other thing I know how to do is be an engineer. So why don't I go find some problem that requires an engineering, solution and try it and raise a little bit of money for that, right? So previously I'd raised about 15 million for the visual effects company that we sold. Here I did a couple startups, raised about 3 for each. Both of them failed. Both of them got to like maybe 50, 60,000 users, which is not enough for a Series A. And I was incredibly humbled. You have that lesson of like, wow, it's not really that easy. I was just that lucky and learned a lot. And a lot of what I learned doing it was, oh, wow, the world went remote, like Zoom became a verb, the pandemic, the whole thing, where suddenly all these other verticals were experimenting with different ways of working. But in film, we had already been doing that. Films already have inherently a remote period, a hybrid period, an in-person period, and then backwards. When writers are writing or you have a pre-production, they're just not called remote and hybrid. They're called like post-production, pre-production, things like that. And what I noticed was there for 100 years, leaders know how to lead through those stages and individual contributors know how to contribute. And I was like, how could I take these lessons and encapsulate them in such a format that what I saw in these 2 startups I ran, we could actually give it to a lot of people. I coupled that with a bunch of knowledge. Everything I say today that's smart in any way probably comes from going to read those like books by the smart people who've written a lot about this. This is not a new challenge of like, how do you be productive? How do you focus? How do you block distractions? How do you be healthy while you're doing it? And, you read Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's book on flow and James Clear and Near and Cal Newport's deep work. There's a lot of commonality. I mean, to be super blunt, the generally accepted productivity principles, I call them, are pretty similar among all those works. They often have their own lexicon. They have their own, framework with some acronym to sell you their book for $24.95. But they all kind of agree on these things. So I thought, okay, let me build something that actually uses my engineering skills, uses my friends' skills, and puts that out there. And that's where I am now, is sharing a lot of knowledge about, hey, what did we learn about how to be productive, even if you're in a hustle culture kind of business, like being an entrepreneur or something, where you often have unhealthy productivity. There you go. There's a long answer to your question.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. First of all, love all the movies, so thank you for that. I could watch Die Hard over and over and over again. I remember my dad and I.
A lot of people do.
Yeah, we used to watch it. I think I grew up on those. I mean, honestly, like the Die Hards, the very first ones. I mean,
the first one is fantastic. I'll tell you, if you were an executive at a studio, every week some talented writer comes in and shorthands their movie by describing it as Die Hard as something, right? It's sort of like in tech, it's like, well, it's like Uber for, cats or whatever, right? Or it's Airbnb for, space aliens. It's that well executed. The original Die Hard movie is just an incredible example of the genre. And to this day is used as a model of like, well, it's sort of this, Die Hard in this. Anyway, back to you.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. So I guess, you could have done a lot of different things and you saw a lot of different challenges. What is it that sparked this particular challenge around productivity and wellness that you said, again, I think I'm going to start a Sukha company and do this. Why do you think this is important? Was it something came from your own experience or was it just something you've, kind of...
I will tell you straight up pain. Like this is very much something where I had to realize my own deficiencies and admit to myself, okay, you know what? I procrastinate. I get overwhelmed. And the way, you develop a great story is you really understand your hero or your heroine. You say like, what is it they want to do? What's the flaw that's holding them back? And in the third act, if they overcome that flaw, it's a success. And if they don't, it's a tragedy, right? That is story structure. So in my own story, I was looking at this and I said, okay, I have some very common problems. And I see them in a lot of, my team working together, which is number one, cold start, which, hey, tomorrow morning at 9, I'll get going. I'm going to start working it. But at 9 a.m., I'd find myself like returning emails or I'd pick up my phone and I'd quickly scroll through, just checking the news, making sure I was up on. You know what? I admitted to myself it's actually just killing time. It's procrastination. It's not like I really needed to return those emails. I was stalling, which leads you to the question, why are you procrastinating, Puri? Right? And if you really look at that, which I did, I was like, I feel overwhelmed. Okay, why do I feel overwhelmed? And it boiled down to one of two things, sometimes both. It was, I looked at my task list, and yeah, there were 17 things on there that I needed to do, but I'm not going to get them all done. And it was paralysis from just seeing so many things where you're like, this is ridiculous, right? So I would stall rather than even start on anything. I would stall. Or one of those items was so big, write my book, where you're like, I'm not going to do that before my 11 a.m. Zoom, and then it leads to its own kind of paralysis of like, what's the point of starting? I'm not going to get that done today or this week, right? And so what I did, this is going to sound super simple, but it really helps me. And I created a smart assistant that when I start work in the morning, I open up, our website, I hit play, and the smart assistant looks at my task list and says, it seems like these three are the priorities. Or what priorities do you have today, Steven? And I get to choose three, and it makes them visible to me as I work, and it hides the other 14. So I can really just look at those and go, oh yeah, I can do that. Yeah, write that thing. I need to send out that email. And it's amazing when it changes. I'll tell you, since we did that in our platform, our members have a 77% better chance of completing all three than when they could see the whole list. They would finish two because it's just overwhelming and you spin on too many things to do. And now our members have done over 500,000 tasks. So we have a bunch of data on this. And it's just like, oh, wow, I have ADHD. Like, it's really hard for me to mentally juggle that many things. And same thing with like, if you have a task that's too big and your smart assistant says, hey, you know what? Writing your book is really a noble goal, Steven. But how about today's goal is like outline chapter 4? Because I saw you outline the first 3 chapters. Then you're like, oh, I could do that in 30 minutes. And suddenly you get into your day. I get into my day in that way. So the answer to your question is really looking at that pain for me of like, why am I down on myself that like I didn't get everything done today, or I don't know where to start, or I'm procrastinating, and just saying, why exactly is it? And then what could I actually do to change that? And make it easier and more fun.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I've learned that the hard way in terms of just like that procrastination, but also it took a lot of self-awareness. And I'm just curious to hear your thoughts. These tools are amazing. It sounds great, but how much self-awareness does one need to have in order for them to, how often do people actually pause and say, why is this happening? Or is that something that like your product does as part of the service it delivers?
This is what I believe. And I think a lot of this was influenced by yoga. Like I met my wife, we were talking earlier. I met Laura in yoga 10, 11 years ago, and it's a big part of our life. And I know it's influenced me in this regard. It's made me more mindful. So even though I'm a type A plus, I want to go make movies, did that. I want to go start tech companies, did that. Like that kind of personality. I now think a little more and reflect a little more than I used to. And my goal with this was not to say everyone needs to stop and meditate. My goal is rather to say, how can I make a tool that gives you the benefits of having done that? That just helps you be more mindful and helps you get through the day and feel a certain way. That's really my goal.
Yeah, I mean, I can see how it can be helpful because we just get so overwhelmed. And I think that's what many of us, I mean, myself included. I mean, my audience knows. Like, I always like when I talk about something. I'm usually just describing myself most of the time. Like,
aren't we all?
And maybe other people feel the same way. So, myself first and foremost. And I work a lot with the corporates, of course, in my world, and I see this quite a bit. That's just nonstop hustle and hustle mode. So one question I have is, so I feel like and this is my personal opinion. I feel like there's a time in your life when you hustle and maybe you are not, I don't know, maybe it's just part of your life. Like, for example, in your 20s, right? Like, I think in your 20s, you just hustle. I think you start to, at least what I found in my life, like I start to utilize some of these tools in my 30s, like I'm in my late 30s now, like towards like really mid 30s to like now. And part of it's because it required me to do the hustle. It required me to understand my limits. It required me to understand how much I can push myself, and it required me to build that resilience. And I feel like right now there's a lot of talk in the, just in the jobs and with the Gen Zs, and it's all about balance, and it's all about that balance. And I feel that, again, personal opinion, your 20s is not about balance. So in this case, I just don't know if we're even aware enough of what balance means to us in our 20s. So, like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that term has become very charged, like work-life balance. For some people, it means I want to have a healthy kind of productivity. I want to do the things that are meaningful, but I want to do them in a way that's healthy. And for other people, it does mean laziness. I'm just be straight up about that. Like, I've had both experiences with people working for me. So what I'm going to say rather is this. I agree with you that in your 20s, there's a lot of like crazy energy that you put in a lot of directions and staying up late working or doing whatever, but there's a lot of like this boundless energy expressing in every direction, right? And hopefully as you become more aware of what part of that energy was effective and what part of that was, I really didn't need to stay up until 3 a.m. because none of that code was usable, right? You start to become much more directed, much more efficient. And I'll tell you a strange example, but this might be interesting, is when we were working on the second Wolverine movie, what was really interesting, and Chris McQuarrie, has done a bunch of Tom Cruise's movies and Mission Impossible stuff and all that. He's an amazing writer. So his point was this. He said, Wolverine is known as being this like frenzied character with energy going in every direction and lashing out. Who is the perfect enemy for him? Someone who is so efficient and perfect in killing, right? The opposite of him. What about a Japanese samurai? What about a ninja? Someone who's just like that. And if you've ever seen some of those, interesting videos about you have two fighters and one of them is just an amazing, martial artists. There are fighters who come at him or her with incredible energy and fists flying and all that. And they kind of just reach out and know the exact right moment to put pressure in one area on the other fighter where his own momentum or whatever just like throws him, right? And to have that kind of efficiency, like I think you're saying, you kind of learn that into your 30s and 40s. Imagine if you had that when you're 20, when you do have boundless energy, but you can say, I want to apply it in a way that is healthy and super effective. That I think is interesting.
Yeah, that's definitely powerful. I wish I could turn back time and go into my
Don't we all?
I know, with this kind of tools, it's like one of those things that just this year I was like, I am a different I'm officially a different generation from the young people coming up. And
oh my God.
Like it's yeah.
I remember going to USC to speak. I was speaking at the Marshall School, and I had that moment I'd heard about from friends. When you look around like your college campus, you go, when do they start letting children go to college? You're like, oh God, I'm not 25 anymore.
Yeah, like as much as we feel internally 25,
right.
Yeah, you start to see this differentiation. So I'm curious, you mentioned that you already have a lot of users and there's some data that's coming out. What's been super interesting to observe? What is some things that maybe were surprising to you in terms of some of the data that came out? Whatever you can share.
Okay, here is something that I really did not know if we should do. I had a hypothesis that there was something about allowing people on our platform to know each other if they choose to, right? Because I would speak to a lot of people who would email me. They know I'm the founder. My email address is public, and they'd be like, "Oh, hey, I want this feature. I love this thing. Thank you for building it." Like, so I knew a lot of them individually, but they didn't know each other, right? And I had this thought where I was like, "What if part of the magic of Sukha is?" Yes, we give you all the tools, and there are many beautiful apps out there. I mean this in a very flattering way. Like if you love sound, like Brain FM and Endel are great. If you love timers, like Toggle's a great spot. They're all great. But what if we just put all those things together and they're table stakes? You get a Pomodoro timer, you get music, you get task lists, you get all that, right? But in addition, you get a sense of community. And I didn't know if that would be like, oh, this is such a cool thing. It's great being around other people. Or it'd be like, this is super distracting. I hate this. I hate you. I'm leaving, right? I was like, which way did I go? And I'm telling you, because you probably figured out my personality type, I spoke to a bunch of our members. I was like, hey, I just had this crazy idea. Could you tell me what to think, right? My mind was made up when I spoke to one particular member. She's still in here. I see her using it. And I pitched this to her. I was like, what do you think if there's got a group chat and you could see each other? And she said, Steven, I can go down to the Nike store and they will sell me a pair of shoes. Left shoe, right shoe. I can put them on my feet. I can go run. They function perfectly. There is a reason 100 million people belong to the Nike Run Club, because when you run together, you run further, run faster, you're more accountable. Mm-hmm. And the day that you're kind of like in a sucky mood and I don't know if I'm going to do it, and your friend's like, come on, Elena, let's go do this, and you do it. And the day when one of your friends needs you to be the strong one and say like, come on, we're going to do this, that feels great. She's like, you should do it. And we did it. And it's a huge hit. And it's not for everyone. There's some people who never participate. They just use the tools. That's really cool. But I also love that when I wake up in the morning, I can go into the group chat and there are a whole bunch of people talking and congratulating each other. And, like there was a guy, this is a side hustle thing. He's an assistant vice principal in Missouri. And I saw him in there nights and weekends for like the past 2 years. And you can post things you're working on. People can ask you. And he posted, it's probably 2 months ago now, he posted, finish my dissertation.
Wow.
And people asked him like, oh, hey, what's up? He's like, yeah, well, while I've been my vice principal, my side hustle is I'm getting a PhD in engineering. And I've been using Sukha nights, weekends to help me focus. So even if I have 2 hours of good thought at night, I get really quality time out of it. And they were like, wow, that's so great. He said, don't get too excited. I still have to defend my dissertation like 2 weeks from Monday or whatever that was, which is not that long ago now. And I'm going to tell you that weekend leading into the Monday, the number of people around the world who post in the group chat, go Roy, you got this. Hey, we're behind you. You're amazing. Da, da, da. And I run the platform. I know none of them know him. These are people that are all scattered around the world. They're not like friends in his high school. And Monday, he was totally quiet. Just everyone's kind of watching the group chat. And Tuesday morning, he came and he said, you may now call me Dr. King. And I was like, this is cool. And people went nuts in the chat with emojis. And like, I love that. I love that. So that was something I did not know if it would work. And it turned out to be one of the best things on the platform.
I think this community part is super important.
Right?
It's we're at least what I see, we're losing a little bit of that. I think I also see the turnaround, and that at some point we lost it. Now I kind of see people turning around and creating and being part of these communities. But the reality is that loneliness is still on the rise. It's hard. People are kind of in the remote work environment. People just kind of like excluded essentially. So I think, definitely having that community is so important, and you never know what kind of change it's making for somebody. So kudos on that. It's spot on. I mean, and the Nike app example is perfect. Absolutely. I have the Nike app. I like to compete. My brother's on it. We're competing, like he's like, what'd you run today? And I can see, and it's a whole thing, and it's.
Oh my God. I love that you said that. I'll tell you, when we migrated, we built a whole new version of the platform a couple of weeks ago and launched it. And we launched it we had a leaderboard where you can, as you work, you can see live like how you're doing and get points for you didn't open Facebook, you worked, or you did open TikTok, you lost some points. So you have this like live graphs, you can see how am I doing, right? And at the end of the day, that posts to a leaderboard. We launched the new version before the leaderboard was built. Can I tell you how many people in the group chat were like, where's the leaderboard, Puri? Like, what's up with that? I was like, oh, so you like that part. Okay, noted.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think healthy competition is good. I think we need more of it, and it's just that support. It's fun. It's
learning as we go. That was an important thing.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And that's one of my favorite parts about just entrepreneurship is that you can just create and try things and get live real-time feedback from your users. And it sounds like a great tool. Another question I have is somebody who's listening to this, and who's like, okay, wonderful. I know I procrastinate, so in addition so talk to me a little bit more about what that tool does, in addition to the community, in addition to helping you stay focused. What else can people gain from using the tool?
Actually, let me begin by saying something that's very actionable, but doesn't actually involve any particular tool, which is one of the things that I learned, especially in reading Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's book on flow, right, where he talked about flow states. And for anyone who doesn't know, I'll just give a short version of that, which is his thesis was there are highly productive people, like high performers, who get into this concentrated state and do great work. How do they do it? What are the conditions precedent that allow them to do it? What is it they do to do it? And you've heard it used a lot of times in different words. Like Michael Jordan talked about being in the zone, where it's just him and the ball. Picasso had a great quote where he talked about staying up all night and forgetting to go to the bathroom or eat or drink or that. But he like painted this amazing thing. He's just like, I was just in this state of the muses speaking to me. So Mihai Csikszentmihalyi was like, okay, so let's study that like as a scientist, not as this woo woo thing, and be like, what is it? He ended up writing the book that named this thing. He wrote the book Flow, and he said, I called it that because it seems like at a certain point, these people can get into a state where their actions are magnified, almost like they're on a river that's carrying them forward in addition to their own efforts, right? And it's a magical thing. I first experienced that on a plane. I was flying from Austin to San Francisco, and I was doing some like designs in Figma or something. I had to meet with my team the next day. And I remember the plane took off and it landed. I was like, oh God, there's something wrong with the engine. We're landing in Dallas. Like, something bad happened. Why would this happen? And I actually checked my clock, and 2 hours and 40 minutes had gone by, and I thought it was about 15. I don't know if the drink cart came by. I didn't go to the bathroom. Like, I have no idea what happened on the flight. But all my designs were done. And I love that because like right by SFO, there's this great New England lobster roll place, which I go to. And I was thinking, oh, I got to run to the hotel and finish this. I was like, I'm done. I can go have my lobster rolls. It's a great day, right? And I was like, what was that thing where I just lost all track of time, lost all sense of the guy next to me and the drink? Nothing. It was just, I did this. It's done. Good work. And that led me to study this. So here's like an actionable thing is there's a lot of research on this. And Cal Newport writes about deep work and shallow work, right? And Nia writes about distractions a lot. It takes you 15 to 25 minutes to get into that state. It's not something where you press a button. And if you get disturbed while you're in it, it takes you about that same amount of time to get back into it. So if you're a leader or you're an individual contributor and you recognize that those great things come out of longer periods of time than just, well, in between this Zoom and the next Zoom, I have 38 minutes, I'll go do something meaningful. No, you're probably not. The things that you can do that move your life forward or move your team forward, you really need to block out like 2 to 3 hours. And one of the things we do in my company is from 9 to noon in the morning, there's an unwritten rule that we just don't book meetings with each other. We don't expect each other to be super responsive. Like even in Sukha, my platform, when you start your session, it marks your Slack in a way so that people know, oh, he's not going to get back to me right now. And it says, I'm in a focus session. I'll get back to you when I'm done. So there's no pressure on like, I need to respond to all my Slacks. I need to respond to all my things. And so if you can create that culture in your organization, if you're a team leader and say, hey, you know what, let's have this time. When does it work best for everyone? And at that time, we will do the things where someone's going to walk into the staff meeting and go, oh, by the way, I built this thing. And everyone else goes, we should do that. Like that changes the future of our company. That's an amazing idea. As opposed to everyone turns in their TPS reports and, returns their emails, which doesn't really move your company forward. It's the same thing if you're an entrepreneur. It's how do you do that thing where it's like everyone looks up and goes, who built this? And it's free. You don't need anything. You need a calendar.
Yeah. I think that's, that's another big challenge we have in organizations, right? It's just the leadership part, the management part, that's definitely lacking. And I think, again, being in a society, at least in America, it's not like that in other parts of the world, but, in America, it's a very much busy, busy, busy. And it's almost like counterproductive to just have that focus moment. And I think we don't give it enough credit that it just, that mindfulness, even the 30 minutes of mindfulness is actually more productive. And again, that's something personally I'm learning the hard way is that
so true.
It's it makes me better, and I see this quite a bit with people who are, very successful, that also they incorporate that. And if they're able to then create space for their teams to be able to do that, whatever that looks like for their teams, just having that time, I think is important. But again, it comes from the top. It's very difficult to have that.
Completely agreed. Yes, you have to create that environment where it's like that, which also is about, and I've worked in SF, I've worked in film, I have not worked in banking, and banking also has this culture in New York of just like, it's a badge of honor to be like, I worked until 3 a.m. And, it's just like, oh my God, you're such a great worker. You're like, when you break out of that mentality and you go, this thing that you did, it changed the course of our company. I honestly don't care if you did it until 3 a.m. or if you did it for 15 minutes at the beach.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care. You have to move into this mentality of work is the effect. It's not the hours. It's not the place. It is the effect. And if someone can do that on your team, wow, you'd be an idiot not to encourage that. What are the conditions that allow you to do that thing? Oh, I need from 9 to noon in the morning to be quiet. I'll give you an example from film. There's a famous screenwriter, Ron Bass. He has written the movies that you get Julia Roberts and Redford and stuff to be in. Right? He writes amazing movies. He doesn't talk to his family in the morning. He gets up like 5-ish in the morning. He's an attorney. He was an attorney who became a screenwriter. And when he's developing his career, he realized that he needed that time. So he told the kids, like, I'm not going to ask you about your cereal. I'm not going to make pancakes. I'm not going to make sure you did your homework. Just daddy needs time until 9 a.m. And they were like, why? He said, well, I realized I can't write dialogue after I've had conversations with you. When I wake up, it's the only time I can hear my characters speaking. So I need that time without even saying good morning to you, so I can go write that dialogue. Now, this is a guy who writes the dialogue that Julia Roberts type people read and go, I will be in this movie. I mean, they get the best scripts offered to them. Ron was famous for this, but he knew his chronotype. He's an early morning person, and he knew how to create the conditions precedent for him to write those movies, which is, it seems weird, but I just can't even say hi to you. Because then I can't hear Julia talking. I can't hear Robert Redford's voice in my head and how they'd say it. And that is, again, as a great leader, is you grow into a leader that says, I want to lead teams to greatness, as opposed to I want to manage how many hours they work. You start to develop that thing of like, oh, with Elena, she needs this time to go do the thing. Watch what happens when I let her do that. And you have to hire well. You can't hire people you don't trust, because then you're like, well, is she at the beach? What's she doing? Is she napping? If you think that it's a hiring problem, it's not really a productivity problem.
Yeah, it's also a challenge with a lot of the return to work in office, and I think they, again, going back to just understanding who is it, how does that particular individual work best? And very well, for engineers, a lot of engineers, they actually need that focused time. You cannot have them in an office where people are, because they need that flow state more than anybody else. And then you just
writers too. You can write code, you can write prose. But you're right, it's hard to write it 15 minutes at a time.
Yes, and then when you're in the office, this whole, actually they would work better at home. You should just keep those people on their own at home, because otherwise people are just going to come and interrupt, and they're not productive as they could be.
Completely agreed. I think one of the things that's interesting about the pandemic was the pendulum swung very far towards, oh, we can't be around each other, we have to be at home, right? And now the pendulum is swinging back toward the middle. The way I think of it is almost like if you were a leader before, maybe on your color palette, you had a lot of like reds and yellows, and you could paint suns, you could paint, that sort of thing. And then the pandemic was suddenly like, oh, there's this whole other color of how you work from home. I have a blue now. So you can paint lakes, you can paint rivers or skies, right? So now suddenly you have a broader palette to paint from. So like you said, you can consciously choose and say, you know what, Elena, I know for you to code really well, you need like 3 days a week where you're home. Do that. Like, awesome. But I also know, like, when we're going to have that brainstorm around how we're going to do this, there's something magical about being in the room together, the 5 of us, and like spitballing and laughing and having like the bad ideas that turn into the good ideas. And it's just not the same. Like, I'll tell you this personally, I've never had to create a brainstorm on Zoom or Google Meet or Teams that has any of the energy of being in the room when you're like, I don't know, well, how does he, if this is not good, how does he kill the dragon? Because he's got the arrow and he has a sword, and then someone acts out something, and it's just like that energy of like, oh my God, you're right, it should be this. Zoom, not that.
No, it's very difficult to replace that in-person energy, whatever it is. I don't know what it is, but it's
you just have more options. As a leader, you have more options to be like, this is an in-person thing. Let's all get together. Oh, you know, flow state, go.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on just AI and how that's going to, people are saying it's going to make us more productive, or like, is it? I have my thoughts about it, but I'm curious, like, for somebody who's in a productivity and focus space and coming from tech and
okay. So, yes, I love to speak in metaphors and stories. So I will give you a metaphor. The way I think about it, because we integrate LLM into our tool, right, is I think that if you go to Usain Bolt and you say, hey, man, I made this robot that runs faster than you do. We're going to have it run, and you can sit here with me and watch it. And people in the stands are going to watch it. It would suck for Usain Bolt. It would suck for the spectators, right? Uninteresting.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go to Usain and say, hey, guess what? With that robot, we helped make a show that fits your toes better. And I think the traction you're going to get, you might shave a second off your time. Is that interesting to you? He would say, yes. And the spectators would be like, oh my God, they're going to run faster and better. I'm very interested in seeing that. So I think generative AI, specific people are conflating LLMs with just AI in general. It's super interesting if it allows you to overperform, if it's a lever that allows you to move the world. So that's the way in which we apply it in the platform, is to say, hey, you know what? You have a smart assistant. It will kind of remember who you are, remember the kind of things you do, help you. Oh, you know, Elena, in the mornings, you always work better with this playlist. Like we have 1,000 hours of original music. It's all scientifically best practices, kind of 60 to 90 beats per minute, all the things, right? It's really cool if after a while it gets to know you, it goes, by the way, I've been watching you. And when you listen to this rain soundtrack, you really do well in the afternoons with creative work. In the morning, when you have to do your TPS reports, you're really good with like global beats. Do you want me to put that on for you? And at that point, you're like, oh yeah, thank you. You're right. I do love global beats in the morning, you know? Things like that, I think, are a great use of LLMs, as opposed to, hey, how quickly can I replace you? Like you hear a CEO of Klarna and Duolingo going, oh, we're going to fire everyone and replace them all with AI instances.
Mm-hmm.
I think they've had to walk that back a bit, because suddenly people try that and they go, this is a terrible user experience.
I'm curious on your, as you're kind of talking about your tool, is it an app that kind of tracks everything you
Just a
do?
website. Yeah.
The website, like, is it an extension? So like, is it tracking what you're, because how does it tell, like, if you're like this soundtrack made you more productive? Like,
I'll
where's
tell
it
you how
going?
it works. It's so simple. You open this website, there's a play button in the middle. You hit play. When you hit play, music starts to play. And you can choose your playlists. There are a bunch of playlists, including not just music, but like soundscapes. You can listen to, you know, surf or rain or birds or whatever you want. Coffee shop. There's actually a coffee shop in Vienna that we recorded. So you can listen to that if you want. Not Vienna, Virginia, Vienna, Austria. So there's that. And there's a task list. Like I said, your smart assistant will say, hey, let's choose 3 things. Okay, here's what you're going to do. Like I had to return some user emails this morning. So it's just like, I had a task for 20 minutes just to bang this out, right? So it keeps you on track. Halfway through your task, it'll be like, hey, Steven, you know what? You should be about halfway done with XYZ task. How are you doing? About 5 minutes from being done, it's like, you're almost out of time. Are you on track? Because time boxing is a very important concept and it works. There's the ability to have your calendar connected. So if you want to block time, you can take tasks and drop them into your calendar. And that way people don't book meetings when you want to get stuff done. It'll also, your smart assistant will tell you if you're working and you have a meeting coming up. It'll say, hey, Steve, you have a meeting in 5 minutes, like wrap it up. And that came really largely from engineers in our platform that said, I've missed stand-ups because I get into a flow state with your app and I miss my stand-up and I need some help reminding myself. So we built that. If you connect your calendar, you can say how many minutes in advance of your meeting, and it'll tell you. So it runs while you're working, plays music. If you get distracted, it'll say, hey, do you need to be in Facebook right now? Because it knows if you want, it can tell you what tab you're in and like get you out of there. And at the end, it gives you feedback. You can look at your graph and sort of see like, what did I do and how did I do it? How many points did I get? Oh, why did I lose points? Oh, you're right. I always open TikTok after an hour because I get bored or something. I should stop doing that. And it just helps you get better day over day if you want. It's just and there are nice people in the group chat. If anyone's like, hey, I wrote my blog post, you can drop it in there and people go read your blog post, whatever.
Yeah. No, that's cool. I like that. It's I'm a huge fan of tools in general, and I think anything that can kind of help you, especially provide some analytics, I think that's super eye-opening. That's all.
Yeah.
I love data, I love information, because then it's like a reality check and it's you, like it's your data, it's your analytics.
Yep. And if you measure it, you can improve it.
Yes.
Agreed.
Absolutely. And it doesn't sound as fluffy because, some people be like, well, we know about flow state, but when it actually gives you that information, I think that's that much more powerful.
That is what we're here to do. You get it.
Beautiful. Before we wrap this up, I have a very important question. How did you come up with the name? I'm curious how people come up with names for companies.
Okay. Thank you for asking a question. I enjoy explaining this. And I know it means a lot of things, a lot of different languages. So I'll tell you, I mentioned, Laura and I have a daily yoga practice. For our honeymoon a couple years ago, we had an early version of, this app running. And for our honeymoon, we were going to Bali. They have yoga barn and a bunch of nice places to go do yoga. Okay, cool. So we're going there. And I said to Laura, I'm wondering in this period of time, no one's going to bug me to approve like purchase orders for staplers. You know what I mean? Like they know I'm on my honeymoon, right? Maybe my unconscious mind will bubble up some cool name for this because I've been struggling to find a name. Mm-hmm. And I had every bad version of like flow state distraction-free app number 12. Like I had all the bad names written out and all of them I knew they were awful, right? So Laura said, that's a great intention. I hope that, the next 10 days while we're gone, that comes up to you. So we get there and I said, I think something would help seed my unconscious mind is, do you mind if I talk to a couple of our power members that I see them all the time, just for like 10 minutes today, just to hear what they like about it? And maybe that'll like help me do something. She's like, I'm going to the pool. Enjoy. I will see you at dinner, my friend. Right? So I spoke to 3 people, asked all the obvious questions. Hey, what's your favorite feature? Do you love the timers, the assistant, or the music or whatever? Right? The third one, I was going into the wrap up where after like 8 minutes, I was like, Elena, thank you very much. I want to take 10 minutes just like I promised. I appreciate your stuff. Right. And the guy I was talking to was actually still a member. I see him in there. He said to me, Steven, you asked the wrong questions. And I was like, really? Well, what was the right question? He's like, you should have asked me why I pay you. I was like, it's like 30 cents a day. I didn't think that was a huge deal. It's not like buying a Birkin bag or something. You're like, no, ask me. So I was like, okay, why do you pay me? And he said, so I found that I can be done with my work at 3:00 and playing with my kids. I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. Or at 6:00, I can be down on myself and be like, where did the day go? What did I do? So the difference is, did I remember to open your app in the morning? So I pay you because my kids are not going to be 2 and 4 forever. Okay, thank you. Right? So I go to dinner with Laura. I was like, oh my God, I spoke to this guy today who is more articulate about what I'm doing than I am. And I told her what he said. She's like, that's really good. I write down his name. So we're going to bed that night. And she's like, we're brushing our little teeth and getting ready. And she said, remember you said your intention this week was maybe the universe will speak to you and give you something. The universe spoke to you through this dude. And in yoga, we hear all these Sanskrit terms like prana for your life force and your breathing, and karma and dharma. And it's like, he basically said to you, Sukha, he's like, he feels that feeling of happiness, of self-fulfillment. When you're good at what you do, you're in your lane and you're good at it and you're in control. You do it with ease. She said, there's your answer. So from bed that night on my cell phone, I went on, the internet, and I looked to see if the Sukha Company, the happiness company domain was available. And it was, and I bought it from my honeymoon. And that's how we named it the Happiness Company.
I love it. That's a beautiful story. And where can people access the Sukha Company?
Super easy. It's TheSukha, thesukha.co for company. So the Sukha Company. And by the way, anyone who tries it, 7 days for free, no credit card, no bullshit. You can just try it. And if anyone has a question about anything that I mentioned, like, oh, I'd love to read that book. What was the name of that book? Or is there a blog post I can read by Cal Newport or something? My email address is very public. It's just Steven, Steven, at thesukha, thesukha.co. Email me and ask me. I will happily get back to you. It doesn't have to be about my platform at all. I won't be able to write you back a 19-paragraph history of productivity, but if you have a question, I will definitely send you an answer. I get back to all my emails in 24 hours if I'm not sick or traveling. So that's available for anyone who cares.
Beautiful. Steven, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. It was really fun to be here. Hope this was helpful.
Absolutely.